Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk to you about our social distancing and development study, and I'm going to present some results about language and cognitive development during the pandemic. This is work that has been done in collaboration with Alexandra Henry from the University of Oxford, Catherine Davis from the University of Leeds, Theodora Gliga from the University of East Anglia, and Michelle McGillion from the University of Warwick. So the social distancing and development study is looking at how lockdown affected early cognitive development, and more specifically, we look at two key aspects of infants' early cognitive development. On one hand, we look at language development, and on the other hand, we look at executive functions. And we also wanted to explore whether any effects might be moderated by factors such as parent-child interactions, parental mental health, the child's sleep, the activities that parents were doing during lockdown with their babies, the amount of time that they were spending in front of a screen, and also their socioeconomic status. Just very quickly, I will let you know a little bit more about what executive functions are. So researchers have identified two dissociable executive function components in young children. And on the one hand, we have cognitive executive functions, which are the skills that enable us to focus our attention, think flexibly to solve problems, and return to what we were doing after a distraction. And we'll be referring to these as thinking skills. And these skills are key to a range of later outcomes, so from school readiness and academic success, all the way up to adulthood, to mental and physical health. And on the other side, we have regulation skills, which relate to a child's ability to calm down after they got frustrated, angry, or sad. And regulation skills are important for social relationships and for later behavioral outcomes. In terms of the methodology, we started with 892 families with 8 to 36-month olds, and we tested them during the first spring lockdown, at the beginning of the lockdown, in the middle, towards the end, and we also tested them again during the November lockdown, and we just finished data collection for during this current lockdown. In terms of the methods, we use an online questionnaire, and we ask parents all sorts of questions, so demographic information. We ask them about their child's language development, so the amount of words that they were able to understand or to produce, the sleep patterns, whether there were any changes that happened as a consequence of the pandemic. We also ask them about their executive functions. For executive functions, then we're just asking about inhibitory control, working memory, regulation. We also asked them about activities that they were doing during lockdown. And we asked them about their mental health, parental mental health, so in terms of depression, anxiety, and stress. And some of the parents also recorded a video of them and their children interacting. And we asked them finally about their early childhood education and care. So then how often they attended nursery or childminders. Bear in mind that this is very much work in progress, so many of the results that I'm going to present are just preliminary in nature. What were babies doing during lockdown? Well, what we found is that overall babies were spending longer doing all of these enriching activities with their parents, so just reading book, playing, talking just one-to-one, doing cooking or indoor exercise. And that was also true for outdoor activities such as gardening, outdoor exercise, and then just spending non-active time outdoors. And that was also true for just children doing these activities on their own. They were spending more time during lockdown reading, playing, doing arts and crafts, outdoor exercise than what they were doing before lockdown. So overall, there was an increase in the time that parents were spending with the children and that children were spending on their own doing indoor or outdoor activities. And that was also true for screen use. So overall, children were spending longer during lockdown than before lockdown in front of the TV screen, both with their parents and on their own. However, this was not the same for all the babies. We found some differences. And in terms of the amount of time that babies were spending doing enriching activities, and also the time that they were spending in front of the TV screen. So what we found is that during the spring lockdown, but not before, this is very important, not before and not during the winter lockdown, parents from lower socioeconomic status families were doing fewer enriching activities with their children that are more advantaged peers. And what we also found is that children from lower socioeconomic status families had more screen time than children from higher socioeconomic status families. And this was true both during lockdown, before lockdown, and also during the November lockdown. So overall, they were spending longer in front of the TV or the screens. Why was there an association between family background and enriching activities during the spring lockdown? Well, you need to remember that during those early months, libraries and playgrounds were all closed. And when we did more detailed analysis of our data, we found that the activities that were driven by these associations required either access to books, so that's reading a book, or access to outdoor space, that is outdoor exercise and gardening. And we know that parents from lower socioeconomic status, they are less likely to have books that are age appropriate for their children, and also access to a private outdoor space. In terms of language development, what we found is that time spent taking part in frequent enriching activities during lockdown, but not before, was related to language production. So the more time they spend doing these enriching activities during lockdown, then the more words the child will produce. And specifically the enriching activities during lockdown that were linked with expressive language growth were reading, speaking, so just one-to-one speaking, indoor exercise, and arts and crafts. And all of these activities are very related to language. So they are really lead to having loads of conversations. So when you are doing indoor exercise, you are talking about body parts, movements. When you are talking about arts and crafts, you're talking about colors, shapes, and that is really good for language development. In terms of parental interaction, what we did was just to look at parental sensitivity, and parental sensitivity is ability to correctly interpret and respond appropriately to the infant signal. So that means to really tune into the baby. And what we found is that the more tuned in a parent is to their baby, then the greater or the better their expressive vocabulary. So the more tuned in, then the more words they are able to produce. And that was also the case between the relationship with the more tuned in a parent is, then the more different kinds of activities they will do with their children. So it's in terms of variety of activities rather than the amount that they spend. And in terms of executive functions, what we found is that we showed that the more enriching activities that parents engage in with their babies and toddlers, the stronger their child's thinking skills. So that was also related. And we also showed that high use of TV and touchscreen devices by children during lockdown was associated with weaker thinking and emotion regulation skills. And also, so no, probably neither of these findings surprise you, but it's really important that we demonstrated that that was the case, because all of the research that has shown this before was done with older children. So it's really important to show that this so screen time is already having an effect in this very young population. So this study makes the case that what happens in the home in the first 3 years of life really does matter for early cognitive development. In terms of the early childhood education care, so we ask parents to tell us just like how often the child attended nursery during the pandemic, And what we found is just that there were some social gradients in childcare attendance during the pandemic. So children from higher socioeconomic status attended nurseries and childminders more often than children from lower socioeconomic status families. And what we found is that during the pandemic, the more exposure to nurseries and childminders was associated with greater increases in receptive vocabulary, so the words that children understand. So the more they attended nursery, the more words they will understand. And that was particularly true for infants from lower socioeconomic status families. So children from the less advantaged backgrounds who continue to attend childcare during the pandemic show stronger improvements in their language skills. And we also found that growth of thinking skills was boosted by nursery and childminder attendance during the period, regardless of the socioeconomic background. So we then found differences, socio-grading differences. And what our findings are really highlighting here is the importance of high quality early childhood education for the development of key skills and leveling socioeconomic inequality. So really our study suggests that attending early childhood education and care really does matter for early cognitive development. And how can parents support and really help their children to thrive? Well, based on our data, we think that this boils down to three different things. One is to inform parents, reduce barriers, and then provide options. And I'll quickly explain this. Our data, what we are really suggesting is that to help children to develop the key cognitive, language, and emotion regulation skills that they need to thrive, academics, early year practitioners, and policymakers, we really need to work together so that we can, on the one hand, spread the message that playing, talking, and singing with your child really does make a difference. Then we need to increase awareness of the risks that are associated with high screen use in early childhood. And we think that policymakers need to really ensure that access to communal resources such as libraries and playgrounds are only restricted as a last resort in the event of future lockdowns. And also increased funding and support is needed for paid parental leave so that parents can really have the opportunity to spend quality time doing these enriching activities that our results are showing that are really important. And we also think that increased funding for community groups is necessary because community groups really are supporting the parent-child interaction relationship, and also they offer affordable parent-child activities that our results are showing to be really important. And finally, we think that increased funding for early childhood education and care is really crucial. So nurseries and childminders not only provide childcare, they provide high quality education and they are very important. So they need to be supported. And also we think that some measures need to be in place to encourage take-up, especially in the most vulnerable populations. In terms of follow-up, as I said, so this is very much work in progress. So we are looking at all of these factors and we are especially interested on the longer term effects. So whether any of the effects that I'll show you will still be here 1 year later. So that was why we were interested in doing that, this latest data collection point. So thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to thank also all the families that took part in our study, our funders, and here are our emails. So mine on the left and Alexandra Henry's on the right. So please keep in touch. Let us know if you have any comments, if you have any questions. We will be more happy to answer. And then I have also put our project's website if you want to keep in touch, keep informed of all the development of this project. Thank you very much.